Well, Christophe, welcome to this MAPIC.
Thank you.
You are now here under the banner of Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield, which is your first time. But for those who don't know Christophe, which I think is going to be probably very few of you, he actually has a background which is as much in retail as it is in shopping centres and investment. Christophe started a long, long time ago when he was way much younger, working in the L'Oréal group, to give it some context, for about 14 years, working in many different cities from London to Milan to Sydney, and then later joined Fnac, which was part of the Kering group, and he was the chief operating officer of that organization before moving on to Conforama. For those who don't know, it's a home furnishing French company, and then going back to Fnac again as Chief Operating Officer. So he's been extremely active within the retail field and understanding a lot about that. But he's very, very international as well, being born in Belgium, although he's French. And over time, he's, of course, got to know many, many different markets. But I think it's really important for us to understand we're not talking to solely a CEO of Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield, which he pioneered and led in 2018 before becoming Group CEO in June of this year. So a lot of skill sets, a lot of information that he can share with us. And the key thing is really to understand the title, Christophe, which we're talking about, which is transforming reality, or transforming retail if we like, but certainly reality. But let's start off with a much simpler question. This new group, Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield, what exactly is it? Geographically, where does it sit? What's the positioning? There's sometimes confusion about what part of Westfield you own or don't own or is part of the group. So just work us through that and let us know.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hi everyone. I'm amazed to see so many people interested by physical. I mean, I thought physical retail was totally dead and there was the retail apocalypse. So thank you for being here. That's very, very encouraging. No, more seriously, Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield, which is a combination, obviously, as the name very smartly indicates, is a combination of Unibail-Rodamco and Westfield. We're now present in 13 different countries, continental Europe, UK, plus United States. We will be adding 2 additional countries with projects in Milan and in Brussels. The group is roughly 64 billion euros in gross market value. And we operate today in 3 main areas, shopping centers, retail, which is obviously the number one activity within the group. Offices, mainly concentrated in Paris or the Paris region, but also on top or right next to a couple of shopping centers. And a business which people don't really know of, actually 2 businesses. One which is the convention and exhibition business in Paris, together with the Paris Chamber of Commerce. And we also have an activity in retail, but in airports, because we operate the retail in 6 airports in the United States, including Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. So it's a group which is in 3 or 4 different activities, but mostly retail. This is what it's about, obviously, today. 97 shopping centers today. 104 shopping centers on the day of the announcements on 12th of December. So you see the group is shrinking, and I'm very happy with the fact that the group is shrinking, okay? And we'll come back to that, I guess. So we already sold 7 shopping centers since the group was announced a year ago, less than a year ago.
Well, let's talk about that, because it was and is one of the questions I wanted to ask. You have had a strategy over the past few years of disposals of certain types of assets. By being part of Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield today, does that strategy change materially, or is it fairly similar?
No, I guess and actually I didn't answer one of your questions, which was which part of Westfield did we acquire. But anyway, the vision and the strategy behind the acquisition of Westfield and forming this new group is that we share the same vision of retail, and we share one common trait in our strategy, which is concentration. So the goal is not to dispose, but the goal is to concentrate, and disposal of what we consider non-core assets is part of this strategy. So we acquired the American and UK part of Westfield. Westfield they were number 2 worldwide up until 2014, with operations in Australia, New Zealand, UK, and the US. And they had a very good idea to help Unibail-Rodamco go from number 3 to number 2 spot, because they split their operations, US, UK on the one side, from the Australasia operation on the other. And we've only acquired the US and UK part. Okay, so the Australia and New Zealand is operated under the name Westfield. We own the brand Westfield, and they operate under the Westfield brand, but totally independently from us. So to come back on the disposals, our vision is very simple with retail, and I guess I've shared that with a lot of people in the room already. Is that, I mean, I personally see, and I think the world is seeing the retail evolving in 3 different directions. Internet sales, obviously, and internet will be a growing part of business, but it's today around 10%. It's between 17 and 20% in the UK. It's above 20%, obviously, for some activities like ticketing, for example, you know, events and so on. It's roughly 50% or slightly above, but it's only 10%. Okay, and then 2 other areas for retail: destination retail and convenience retail. And we are definitely in the destination or experience retail segment. This is where we concentrate, this is where we're good at, and this is where we want to be the #1 operator worldwide. So we are concentrating more and more on large assets which correspond to our strategy. And what I really want to insist on is that there is not just one strategy. It's not because it's our strategy that is the only one. It would be very presumptuous. No, it's just our strategy, and we try to do it as best as we can. But I see a very good future as well for proximity or convenience. It's just not where we are. So we prefer not to be on something which is not core to our business. So we're disposing shopping centers, as I said, 7 shopping centers recently. I think one of the good examples that everybody cannot have the same strategy, and I think it's good news. We just disposed 4 shopping centers in Spain. And there were our 4 smaller shopping centers, and the press release we had prepared was we're very happy because it increases the average size of our shopping centers. And you know what? The guys who purchased these shopping centers were very happy because it doubled the size of their average shopping centers, because for them, they were the largest shopping centers in their portfolio. So, I think it's depending how you see life, and you can't all see life in the same way. So this is the way we see life, and I think there again, I mean, if people want to compete on this experience shopping, and we have very good competitors, fine. But there's also room for other types of retail, which is more on the proximity, convenience, smaller type, but closer to the people. So it's 2 different types of retail, and obviously internet goes on top. And what I want to say about internet, and I guess everybody there again in the room knows this, is that the 10% will grow. Internet is growing at a much faster pace than physical retail, but 2 things. 1, half of this market share is Amazon, and the other half, to put it schematically, Amazon and a couple of local players like Cdiscount in France or ASOS in the UK, or a couple of very specialized niche players, but basically it's Amazon, and the other half is people who have physical stores.
So
and
just to that,
and I'll just add one thing, is that what I just said is totally wrong, because of course now Amazon is opening stores, so I guess 100% of the internet business is people who have stores, and I think that's the best news of the latest 2 years.
I mean, that's precisely, so we've kind of converged on that. So you see the digital component as an opportunity for yourselves as an organization, but before you answer that, I mean, how can you see that developing? But equally importantly, how do you change the mindset in a company like yours or any other shopping center owner, investor who have a physical digital mindset, but they haven't quite got there yet? So how do you change that from the staff point of view, from the teams, from the way in which you approach it? How have you done that in Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield?
It's, first of all, I have to be very modest. I was lucky enough to be in the brand business when I was at L'Oréal, and then I actually left L'Oréal in 1999 and joined Fnac in early 2000 because L'Oréal was not digital enough at that time. Now they've gone. And I had just heard Mr. Pinault, who was the CEO of Fnac at the time, and who's now the CEO of the Kering Group, but announcing that they were launching Fnac.com before Amazon landed in France, and wanted to be doing, 1 billion francs, for those who remember, who are old enough, that's about 150 million euros in 3 years, and investing a lot of money. And I wanted to be part of this adventure. And so I joined Fnac and helped Fnac be a click and mortar retailer. And in 2004, I was the CEO at that time, and I was very proud that Fnac.com probably became the first profitable internet site. And this, for me, confirmed the vision that click and mortar was the future, the real future of retail, and that the only way to be profitable, you can ask Amazon, is to have stores. And to build on the strength of the store in order to generate more sales on the internet and to offer what customers want is a click and mortar solution. Is anyone in the room a click-only customer? I don't believe so. Is anyone in the room today a mortar-only customer? Obviously not. So every one of us is click and mortar, so retailers need to be click and mortar, there's no other choice. And I think the future of retail is not even click and mortar, it's just connected retail. It's where I want, with whom I want, with whichever site or whichever store I want, and it's totally interconnected, and this is what we have to evolve. Now, for the switch of the teams, because obviously we're in a real estate business, i.e. with buildings, you know, it takes 15 years to build a new shopping center, sometimes more in France or in some other countries. But anyway, but it's the teams. Because actually once you got the best buildings, so fine, but you need the teams to operate them on a daily basis, to identify the right retailers, to do the operations, to organize events and so on, to make these assets live. And when you look at the teams at Unibail-Rodamco, and I'm always fascinating when I go to the office in the morning, is to see the youth of our teams. We're obviously hiring a lot of young people every year, every day. And when I see these guys and these ladies, they're obviously click and mortar people. They're the famous millennials and so on. They're very difficult to deal with, but they're 100% connected. So if ever you thought that business was not connected, just look at the people you work with, just look at the people you hire, just look at my own children, for God's sake, they're just click and mortar people. And sometimes to my desperation, but anyway, that's family business.
Well, yeah, I mean, family, but family is still your own family in terms of Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield.
I see more Unibail-Rodamco than my family.
I'm sure you do. Well, you've got to fix that. You're the CEO.
Yeah, I wish.
But what's interesting over the years is that, in fact, what you've done, if I see it, is you've accelerated the growth of individuals coming into your company, because many of those that I've known over the years have actually not come from real estate backgrounds. There have been certain real estate schools, but you've not really made it your ambition. They've come from hotels, from leisure, from other services, and you brought them in. So I guess you've just accentuated that, really, in terms of your approach. So when you're looking for that change and development, it's not just about youth, because there have got to be more mature people that run the business. So how do you see that rise in digital, and how is that going to be complemented by that human component within your organization?
You're perfectly right. I mean, I think a lot of real estate companies just deal with real estate people. So it's about finance, about your returns, about yields, it's about development and so on. But in the end, we're a people industry, because we more and more need to deal not with our investors, not with our retailers, but with our investors, our retailers, and our consumers, our visitors. First thing. Second thing, you mentioned the hotel industry. That's a very good example, because a couple of weeks after I joined Unibail-Rodamco, I launched the famous 4-star strategy, which was directly inspired by the hotel industry. And we're actually having a quality seminar with our shopping center managers in a 4-star hotel. And I said, why don't we put 4 stars on the logo? And I started drawing on a piece of paper, thought it looked good, talked to 2 or 3 people in the company, and there it was. And it's a very good example that the shopping center industry is so linked to what people want, and people want comfort, service, experiences, which other industries can give, hotels, airports, entertainment, and so on. So I think it's very important to hire people from different industries in order to feed us with whatever is happening elsewhere. Fnac's motto was agitateur de curiosité, curiosity agitator. I don't know if it's and I think curiosity is what we really need in this business, because it's changing so fast. I can tell you, not one man alone or one woman alone can understand what's happening around the world. So we need people from different horizons, different nationalities, different backgrounds in order to feed the company. And obviously, it's about physical and digital, because they're totally intertwined. So
to that point, how do you see O2O as a buzzword? We hear a lot of it here in MAPIC and have for a few years. What does that mean to you? What does it inspire, or what do you think it is not? Because that's an important question as well.
So O2O, one-to-one, or it's the big issue we have as shopping center operators, as landlords, is that we miss one crucial information, and that's the transaction. We don't have the transaction, that's the retailer's business. So I think the one-to-one strategy for us is to increase the loyalty of our customers for the information we have. And there are so many ways of getting the information, through beacons, through phone tracking. The GRPD people are not in the room, I hope, so that's fine. And so on. But I think one thing is very important is association with retailers. More and more our business is not only about leasing square meters at the highest level possible. Yes, that's still our job. But above all, understanding the business model of retailers, trying to adapt the mix of our shopping centers with what's happening in the industry. For example, a couple of years ago, we didn't have car dealers in our shopping centers, and nobody would have thought that we'd have them. And we just opened 4 years ago, I guess, the first Tesla store in the shopping center in Sweden, then the second one at Mall Scandinavia. We're the first ones to introduce Tesla in shopping centers in France, I guess in the UK as well with Westfield London. So, this is a new industry, and this is things evolving, and we need to collaborate much more with retailers and to have not just a negotiation about square meters. This is done once every 5 years or once every 10 years. But in between two negotiations, we need to see how we can grow together the business. Life is tough for retailers, life is tough for us. Business is changing so quickly. It's about sharing information, sharing business models, and attracting more customers to more retailers. We did a study in Europe and in France, and it's the same thing in the US. On average, at each visit, customers visit 3 or 4 stores. I think the official figure is 3.6. Can be sometimes more in some shopping centers, sometimes less in others, depending whether you have a food retailer, because usually when people go to a food retailer, they go there and nowhere else, or maybe in kind of they have their phone fixed or whatever. But that's 1 or 2, so that's average. But basically, if we can manage to get 1 more store visited or 1 more store with purchase at every single visit, we're going to be very rich, and the retailers are going to be very rich as well. So the business, once the negotiation is done, is how we can grow the business together. We can increase footfall, but I think it's much easier to benefit from the existing footfall and turn it into a much more productive visit by having the right offer, the right retailers, and everybody doing their job.
Well, you've picked up on one of the words I was going to bring up, is footfall, because we all talk about footfall and the need for footfall driving into the shopping centers, of course. And when you talk about online, offline, there's a tendency to imagine that it goes offline or you come physically into the store or the shopping center. So there's kind of a mismatch. But in terms of footfall for you, and I want to bring in food and beverage as well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but in driving that footfall, what sort of level of connection and discussion do you have with the retailers? Because if we take the example, yesterday we had the outlet summit here as well, and in the outlets, one of the things that they do really well is that owner-operator brand relationship, where they have constant, permanent conversations around how the business is going. Is that something that you have started to introduce in a specific formatted way, or is that yet to come?
So obviously we share footfall information and so on, but not to the level that outlet people do it. And I must say I'm very impressed by the way they do it. And that's certainly an inspiration for the normal shopping center operators. Outlet centers are ahead of us in terms of cooperation with retailers. Certainly. They actually turn themselves into retail operators. So it's an inspiration. We still have a long way to go, but it's starting with a lot of people. You mentioned food and beverage. That's obviously the case. Cinema is the case. A lot of the more the retailers are confident with their own business model, the easier it is. Okay, and I always see in the official figures of the industry, footfall, sales, and so on. These are averages, and for me, averages don't mean anything because there are so many different situations. And I always challenged by French journalists about footfall of shopping center is going down according to the CNCC figures. Yes, but ours are going up. So, don't compare yourself with averages. Try to be the best at what you do. And as I said earlier, there are different ways of being the best, or different fields where you can be the best. There is no other way forward than better cooperation with retailers. I'm convinced about this, once again. And there's no other way of doing it than by sharing information. I feel sorry when some retailers don't even give us their sales figures. And a couple of retailers, which are among the best actually, don't share sales figures. It's a big mistake. Because if I know that they're doing well, I want to improve, and if I know that they're not doing well within our shopping centers, I'm going to try and find solutions. And we're really pushing our shopping center managers and our leasing teams not only to talk about, there again, figures, but about business. So if you don't have the information, you can't improve the business. You can't fix it if it needs fixing. That's the first thing. The second thing is trying to go beyond the famous metrics of the industry. We're talking about OCR, and OCR is basically rents plus service charges plus marketing expenses plus taxes, because some people have to pay taxes, divided by turnover. Fine. But what we know as well is that in the best locations, physical stores drive internet sales. There's a very interesting study that has just been released by Revo, the British Council of Shopping Centers, showing that 12%, they consider a 12% increase in online sales when they open a shop in the catchment area. This is very significant. That means that you just can't take the sales of one store, but you have to consider the halo effect. There's another study that has been done more recently, I think it's by the ICSC, showing that you have an increase of 37% of the traffic on the internet sites when the physical store is open. Okay, so there again, it can depend on the activity, it can depend on the shopping center, it depends on the size of the store and so on, but I think this proves one thing is that one, physical and digital go together. Two, that the brands have to be very selective in the locations they choose because they have to choose locations that do good for them in terms of how they want their brand to look and in terms of the internet business, and that you cannot consider internet as separated from physical. I see someone who worked with me at Fnac over there, and he probably remembers the days when the salespeople in the stores were complaining because if someone returns a computer which I haven't sold, it's been purchased on the internet and I have to, okay, how many, it was in 2000, okay, how many times did this happen last month? No, it never happened. Okay. So when it happens, we'll deal with it. But anyway, it's the customer, and it's Fnac, or it's Sephora, or it's Best Buy, or it's whatever. So it's the same customer. It has to be the same organization. You can have different P&Ls. You can have different, reconciliations, shadow P&Ls, whatever. It's the same customer, and the success of click and collect, the success of order in store, be delivered at home, the success of internet just alone proves that you have to deal with the customer. And dealing with the customers means that landlords have to deal with the retailers because there again, the ones who have the transaction and who can test whether or not you're successful, they are the retailers. So more cooperation for this one-to-one activity. And we also have to improve our marketing, and this is why our marketing is more and more turning digital as well. Now, more or less 50% of our marketing spend is digital. Okay, and that's an opportunity for us to connect on a one-to-one with customers instead of invading the ring roads of large cities with posters which half the people don't see.
Don't read anymore. Just want to focus for a few minutes on
to everyone, I guess, because
on food and beverage, because there's a question that I think a lot of us in this room have, which is it's a little bit like the old situation where you have a cinema and you think that your cinema is going to drive traffic in the shopping center, or vice versa. Food and beverage we talk about a lot as being the ultimate, the panacea, the solver of all problems. But what actually are you seeing? Maybe if you can't talk numbers, that's fine. But in terms of the transfer of the person who goes to a food and beverage area, whatever they require or expect, and then shop in the traditional parts of your center, are you seeing much crossover, an increase in sales in the full price area?
It's not just a Holy Spirit operation, as we say in French. It's not just because you increase food that you increase sales or footfall or whatever. I think it's a combination of one, increasing the size, two, doing it better, and three, making it in a different way in each shopping center. Our industry is not about photocopying everything everywhere, but it's about prototypes. And the situation in Les Quatre Temps in La Défense, which is the number one shopping center in continental Europe, very busy area, 190,000 people working in the area in the number one business district. Of course, food is absolutely essential, and we didn't wait to increase the size of food. In other areas, which are more destination shopping centers, this one is a traffic shopping center, it's 42 million visitors every year, and I have to confess, every 42 million visitor is not as good as the other one, because some people just go through the shopping center to go to the office. However, it's 42 million, that's good. In other shopping centers, it has to be a destination. In any case, it has to go hand in hand with leisure, and cinema is the best leisure activity for any shopping center. I love all the others, and we're increasing space for the others, but cinema is the key, especially in some countries where the cinema industry has been protected, and I'm thinking among others of France, obviously, and a good cinema is about 10 to 15% of the traffic of a shopping center. And before the cinema, you can have something to drink. After the cinema, you can have something to drink or to eat, so it goes very well. And the thing is, you have to have a food offer which caters for all the different moments, where it's just grabbing a coffee in between two purchases or in between two meetings, whether it's a sit-down offer and so on. And what we've done, and I have to confess that I was amazed, and this is probably one of the reasons which led us to acquire the Westfield operations. I was amazed when I visited for the first time Westfield Stratford City in 2011. We had organized a meeting with all our leasing people actually in September 11, just I think it was 3 days after Westfield Stratford City had opened. I love spying, I love being inspired, and I love my people to be inspired. So we went there, and honestly, when I saw the food offer, I said, my God, we're choir boys in this company, you know, but we haven't done what they've done. And, you know, immediately we launched together with Michel Lessonnin a huge operation, say, okay, let's get up to it, you know. So we decided to increase by 2, to double the size dedicated to food. We decided to dining, to F&B. We decided to drastically change the name of retailers that we had there. Yes, you need the McDonald's, the Paul's, and the whatever of this world, but you also need different experiences, better experiences, sit-down restaurants. And this led to, I think, the best 2 examples after Westfield Stratford City, or 3 examples after Westfield Stratford City. One, O'Leary's in Mall of Scandinavia, 6,000 square meters of entertainment dining. It's a sports bar. It's absolutely fantastic. And who would have thought that you could have, you know, 2 different bowling alleys, a mini golf, different games, I don't know how many TVs, and the thing is packed. Okay, it's packed. Not at 10 o'clock in the morning, but in the evening. And I can tell you when there are matches or concerts in the arena next door, it's just fantastic. That's one example. The second example I want to mention is Century City, which I don't know if some of you have visited Century City since it's been totally revamped last year. F&B there is fantastic. It's the first eatery of the West Coast. There's a restaurant when you get in which is called Javier's, which is an incredible restaurant. You've got the Din Tai Fung, which is a very successful Taiwanese concept, which we're expanding in the West Coast now, which is fantastic. So you have, of course, the regular food hall or the food court players, but you have so many different ways of experience, different moments. And this is changing the face, and you bring people that would never have thought going to a shopping center before. You know, in so many countries, people don't like shopping centers because they have never been to shopping centers, or because shopping centers are anchored by hypermarkets, which is the case in most continental European countries. But when you change the way dining is orchestrated around a cinema or a leisure activity, it changes the way your shopping center feels. And the last example is what we've just signed in Les Ateliers Gaîté in the center of Paris, in a district where we own actually the whole block, and it's a very good example of a mixed-use project that we're running. I think this is also the future of retail. But we've just leased 4,800 square meters of food to a night operator, actually. It's the group owned by Mr. Patou. And it's a fantastic operator of different restaurants, discotheques, venues in Paris, and 4,800 square meters, which I think will be the largest food hall in Europe. And this will radically change the image of the shopping center. It was a shopping gallery, which was pretty lousy, I have to confess. And we're totally redesigning it, revamping it, and so on, and changing it the best social area of the left bank of Paris.
I love O'Leary's, by the way. I saw O'Leary's in Stockholm. It's amazing. They were doing the extension for an additional 1,000 square meters.
Another very good example of inspiration, because this guy was inspired by the sports bar of Boston, just did it 10 times better in Stockholm. You know, and the guy is Swedish, called O'Leary's, wonderful. He married an American lady, and maybe that's why.
Could be. I think they've celebrating their 20th anniversary this year or next year, so done a phenomenal job. Love to see them in France one day, one of these days. Maybe you're working on that already.
Working on that. You'll see them in the Mall of the Netherlands very soon.
Excellent. You've touched on it already, but one key question is, amongst all this, there are 2 actually, so I'll ask them at the same time. You can maybe blend them. We talk a lot about the Generation Z, you know, the millennials and whatever. We have to be clearly careful, because we think they're the shoppers of the future and they're going to be the save all in our area. How do you see the integration or involvement of that whole millennial strategy or Generation Z in what I want to ask, which is the shopping center of the future or of tomorrow, for want of a better description? How do you match the 2 to make sure it works, and not forget the rest of us who are certainly not millennials? Most in this room, millennials, we love you, but still.
Some people have got white beards, yeah.
When you have kids as old as we do, it gets to be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I get there again. It's an everyday challenge, but you know, they want connection. They want to follow their phones. I'm just amazed at the number of people who follow their phones when they walk. You need to give them all the information they want. A lot of people use their phone in store to check online items. People want to access the shopping center easily. A lot of these millennials actually will not drive. So connectivity is key for the future, okay? And they would want to go beyond shopping. So eating is one thing. Another very good example, sorry for digressing like this, but I'm amazed to see the growth of home delivery in food. Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Delivery Hero, Foodora, whatever. And at the same time, you have incredible concepts like O'Leary's you mentioned, and the latest example in Paris is La Felicita. I don't know if you've been to La Felicita, which is a 4,000 square meter restaurant at the end of Paris. I mean, you would never think of going there, and it's packed. It is packed every day, lunchtime, afternoon, nighttime. And yet these guys, they don't want to cook, they just want to be delivered at home, and at the same time they experience unbelievable physical experiences. They like to queue, by the way, which is something I will never do, but they like to queue for something extraordinary. Fine, wonderful. Okay, let's give them things which are extraordinary. So it's a mixture of making their life easy. They change all the time. They change opinion all the time. They want everything at any given time. Okay, so we need to give them that. We need to be capable of making our shopping centers evolve so that it caters their needs. And this is why we are so keen on rotating the tenants in our shopping centers, at least 10% of new concepts every year in every shopping center. If you don't do that, you become old.
So right across the board, you'd be...
Across the board. Every shopping center, 10%.
Local, neighborhood, whatever, the whole...
Whatever.
Okay.
10% new names, okay? Or new concepts of existing names. But we fight like hell, and I think some people in the room know that. We fight to get the latest concepts because if you don't change, you get old. And you get old much more quickly today than 5 or 10 years ago. It's terrible to say, but it's the truth. People get bored, and the millennials get bored. They get bored working for me as well.
So do you integrate into that design? Because we mustn't forget that as well. You've got some great-looking shopping centres, of course. But how do you look at the maybe more neighbourhood, more local, more city centre, as well as those destination shopping centres, and get a design that is sufficiently attractive to be interesting for people to come along and discover something new? So as you turn that 10% or whatever, would you look at maybe in time adjusting the design and concepts as well?
Yeah, we spend an awful lot of money renovating our shopping centers. We have, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but we have a 12.5 billion euro pipeline of development projects. 2.5 billion is offices, mostly there again in the Paris regions with iconic offices such as the Triangle Tower or the Sisters Towers. 10 billion is retail. And we have a very limited number of very large new schemes, Westfield Milan, Mall of Europe in Brussels, or Westfield Hamburg in the Übersee Quartier in Hamburg. So these are very few in numbers, very big in size, obviously, because we want them to be the leading shopping centers of their catchment areas, like Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, or Westfield Century City are. But the other half, 5 billion euros, is on redeveloping existing shopping centers, improving them, either just redesigning, like we did in Rony 2, not one single square meter, 20 million spent, and it's probably the best 20 million spent in the history of Unibail-Rodamco. The renovation is fantastic, okay? Or extensions, because when there is potential, and by monitoring closely the demand of retailers, you can, of course, evaluate that potential. We expand our shopping centers. And this is what we did lately with Carré Sénart in the southeast of Paris, where we have great new concept. Home is new as well, with the La Redoute Intérieure, a fantastic store, which I invite you to visit. We have also expanded Centrum Chodov, our leading shopping center in Prague. We have, all this, and we have so many projects. Vélizy 2, we're just creating now a new cinema. The cinema was not very good in Vélizy 2, so we're creating a brand new shelf for a brand new UGC cinema, which will be fantastic. And we're adding 25 or 30 food concepts to Vélizy 2. This is what we do. And then the next step will be extending the retail part, because we know that we can't host all the people. One great thing about continental Europe, and the UK, by the way, which is not so much the case in the US, is that vacancy is low in the best shopping centers. I mean, at Unibail-Rodamco, our vacancy is about 2.3%, I think, at the end of June, which is very low, which means that if someone wants to come with a large concept, you can't host them. So you have to make room, which we do, but sometimes you need to expand the shopping center when the potential is there. Now, one thing is key as well for these millennials, I mentioned, is connectivity. They want to have an easy access to your shopping centers. They're very climate conscious. They're very sustainability conscious. So we also have to change the way we deal with these things. And this is why we launched in September 2016 the Better Places 2030 strategy, which aims at no less than reducing by 50% the carbon footprint of the group before 2030 from 2015. So this is things that also speak to them, because this is translated into, things that
matter to them.
We have a partnership which we just expanded to all our shopping centers in France with Too Good To Go, which is a startup which is specializing in recycling the leftovers of hypermarkets or restaurants. It's fantastic, and they like that. We have so we also work a lot with startups, which is a way of retaining our own millennials, but also of accelerating on some innovations in our shopping centers. We have we worked with a startup. I think it's advertised actually in the Mapic catalog, called Molcom, with which we developed Connect, which is an app which links our shopping center management with all the retailers and all the employees of the shopping centers. So we have, I think, 45 shopping centers connected in continental Europe out of the 62 that we have. And actually, Westfield uses them as well in the UK, and we will be expanding in the US. It's a fantastic way of connecting with people and so on. So more food, more leisure, more connectivity, more new things, constant change, making place for new concepts, and teaming up with startups to accelerate this transformation, I think, is absolutely key. Not easy. It's an everyday struggle, obviously, but I think it's absolutely key for the industry to thrive in the future. We are facing difficult times. I mean, retail is difficult at the moment, let's face it. So it's a question of making everything needed for the retailers and for the customers to come regularly to your shopping centers.
Christophe, like any of these sessions, it goes so fast. We've run out of time almost, but I do have one final question for you. You can either respond from an industry point of view or from your own personal or Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield point of view, but what, amongst all these many things that are happening and going on, what keeps you awake at night? Mm-hmm. What is the thing that you most worry about or concern about? You know,
there was one thing that used to keep me awake at night, and that was people. Because I think, as I mentioned earlier, we can be as good as we are in owning the best shopping centers of our catchment areas and investing and having the trust of investors and I hope and I guess the trust of retailers. Doesn't mean that we're not having a couple of energetic discussions and so on, but you're only as good as the people who work with you and for you in this adventure. And we are very demanding at Unibail-Rodamco, and the industry is very demanding, and we're relentless at improving our venues and of course also at our financial targets. So I don't think we have enough good people to work on this. So we need to recruit and we need to retain. And of course, this is one of the challenges to recruiting the right people. And everybody could look good on an interview, but it's a question of how good you are every day of your business life. And two, retaining the best people. We're losing people. Say, but you're not happy at Unibail-Rodamco? Say, yeah, I'm happy, but you're not challenged. Yeah, we're challenged, but why are you leaving? I'm leaving. And when I was starting my career, this would never happen. You would start in a company, you would choose well, but start in a company and then think that you would stay the whole life. And then you might leave after a while, but never when you're not disappointed. And I think this is one of the most difficult things we have to do, is that the millennials, they are so eager to discover so many things and have different experiences and so on before maybe one day they finally settle, that they change more than we used to. So retaining the people, hiring the people, retaining the people, motivating the people to go all in the right direction. We're a small company, and we're big by the size, but very small by the number of people. Only 3,700 people in the whole company now, Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield. So it's a very small company. So we need 3,701 very, very good people for us, and this is what keeps me awake, or used to keep me awake. Now, stupidly enough, I added another thing, which is called Westfield. and of course, it's been an unbelievable journey for the last 4 years, because all this started in June 14th. So it took us 4 years of reflection, thinking, discussing, not dealing, then coming again. It's been an unbelievable work by the teams. But now, here we are. Since the 7th of June, it's one group, and I can tell you our ambitions are high. And the challenges are very high, and it's a question of integrating everybody, taking the best of Unibail-Rodamco, the best of Westfield, and making this one group. The journey is even longer than the one we've been through, because obviously Rome was not made in one day, so there's a lot of challenges, a lot of things to do, but it's very exciting. I was in LA last week for the budgets, and it's challenging but very exciting, and there are fantastic people in the Westfield team, so we're very happy to have them with us to help us grow the company as one group.
So in fact, you've taken people, you've added culture, so you've got people and culture now, and trying to mix those two together.
Yeah, for those who know him, I sent Jean-Marie Triton in the US, so it's a culture shock for Jean-Marie, but it's a culture shock for the US as well.
Yes, it's a unique individual, Jean-Marie, that's true. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we've absolutely run out of time. Christophe has a very heavy agenda, so thank you very much, Christophe.
Merci beaucoup.